Okay, I will just present the questions we received, and we will try and read them out and then answer them. And then we can take additional questions if we have those. So here's the first question. Can I use Dart to develop a microservice front end with common dependencies? And Kevin, if you'd like to answer this one.
Good evening. Wait, one more time. Can you build a microservices? Wait, repeat the question. Are microservices, or I can guess what?
You can see the question on your screen.
There we go. I can click around. Standard library rootkit in DLL Webpack. Well, okay, so does the person who asked the question around? Because I need some clarification. I heard of microservices, and we're actually doing something like that on the package site right now in Dart, but that's on the server side. So I see references to DLLs, I think Windows, and I see references.
That's okay, Kevin. I think we'll just skip to the next question, and then when we're done with all the questions, we can ask them again live in that case. That's totally okay.
That might be easier.
Let's take the second one about the future of the language, and maybe Anders, you can talk to this.
Yeah, definitely. So, first of all, it wasn't entirely clear to me was like the future of the language in terms of how the language will evolve, or the future of the language in terms of like how successful it will be. Basically, I can talk a little bit about the immediate future of the language in terms of how we plan to evolve it, and then obviously promise you that it will be hugely successful in parts because of wonderful users like Write. But let me try and talk about it in a bit more detail. Basically, in terms of the language, as you know, we have, if you've been following Dart or been using Dart, you know we've talked a lot about strong mode and having sound and stronger type system. And as we are approaching, having Dart 2, strong mode is really the main thing there, but we have a couple of other nice features. We're looking at things like optional new and const, something that will make a lot of building UIs for Flutter look nicer and simpler. And then obviously beyond Dart 2, we're looking at improving the language in ways that makes it easy to use Dart for writing UI or for writing client-side code. And we plan to make more improvements along those lines. In terms of how the language is evolving, we're still seeing almost explosive growth internally in the company. It's being used by some of the largest end teams, in particular in ads, but we're starting to see this spread to more teams. And we also, in terms of platforms, where the primary usage of Dart internally, I think it's fair to say, is still web client. We are starting to see more and more use of Dart also in the context of Flutter. In particular, the teams using it for both platforms. So we're seeing a lot of growth internally. Externally, I think as Flutter is maturing and gaining more traction, we're starting to see a positive effect of that on the Dart language. If you look at Google Trends, or when you look at people visiting our websites, we're starting to see the effect of people being excited about Flutter. So I think we're at a healthy point and expect to see more growth or popularization as Flutter gains interest from more people.
Thank you. Third question is how Dart supports modern browser technologies. That's for you, Kevin.
Hi, great question. So we've had this interesting, we've been in this place for a while where we've been supporting this version of Chrome called Dartium. Instead of Chromium, it's called Dartium. And this had Dart built into it. And so that was pretty nice for debugging. The problem is it made evolving our APIs really slow. And so for things like RTC or web components, it turns out that implementing those correctly in Dart, in our custom version of Dart in the browser, is really difficult. So our hope is now that with the Dart 2.0 plan, we've talked about this on our website a bit, we're moving away from Dartium and using this technology called the dev compiler. That means you give the same fast iteration cycles, but all in JavaScript. We're hoping to be able to support some of these newer technologies. So WebRTC and Web Components in particular, I need to dig in on in terms of our support there. I know things like the things in the short list for me are things like Service Worker and Web Worker, to make sure those work well. There's a person on our team in here in Seattle that's working hard to roll. I think we're rolling 14 versions of the Chrome API, so we're up to 62 now, or 61. So we'll have a much fresher set of the browser APIs. I'm going to talk to them next week. So the short version is we are working really hard to kind of catch up to the more modern browser APIs supported by the latest versions of Chrome. Things like Web Components, WebRTC are not on my short list of things that I've really looked into, so feel free to follow up with me later. But we do have a goal to make sure that basically if a web technology is commonly supported across browsers, it will be available from the Dart HTML libraries and friends.
That's good. Then there's a question about why the code works at runtime even when there's a bug.
Yeah, this is both a very good question, but I think also a case of having hit one of the few strong inconsistencies that we have right at this moment between our tools. So in particular, the use of super and mixin is supported at different levels in across Dart2JS, the dev compiler that Kevin just talked about, and the Dart VM. And we're going to clean this up, but essentially we wanted to make this possible. Flutter has been using this, so you can't do it in Flutter, but the analyzer kind of being the front end of what you see as a developer, you will often see that being sort of the last tool to turn on a particular feature. So it might be that Analyzer in this particular case doesn't like it, but if you run it in the VM or Datium, things might still run fine. But in generally, if the Analyzer disallows something, the general rule is to probably not use it unless you see it's on the horizon and there might be a flag for it or something, you can turn that on. But I think that's a particular reason in this case. And in general, the analyzer is it's a good way to get warnings and errors. Anytime things should be more consistent. But this is a particular case where we do have inconsistency, so good catch.
Great. The next one is also for Janos about the Dart VM and Chrome.
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question if Google refused it, but essentially at a certain point we realized for Dart to be relevant and useful for developers, including our own teams or Google internal teams, you need to be able to write Dart code and run it well across all browsers, and in particular being able to do development in a way that would allow you to also debug and run things on other browsers. The dev compiler that Kevin mentioned has been an important kind of component in that shift of focus of really trying to give end users the best possible experience across all browsers. So there's been less focus of actually landing the VM in Chrome. And I think along the way, I think there was also realization of the added complexity of having having another VM in Chrome, having to run alongside the Jetton was also, I think, orders of magnitude more complex than we had first imagined. I think that also played a role in not kind of jumping on the opportunity to improve the VM. But overall, I think we're happy with, for the web deployment, we're happy with the strong focus on generating good JavaScript that will run in all browsers.
Yeah, I mean, the analog, I spaced out there a second, but I think Knackle, the native client, is another good example here, where Google tried to go investigate and see if we could do something interesting, adding this native client runtime into Chrome. What we realized was aligning around something like WASM made more sense. So making sure that we support technologies that work across the entire web. And so I think it was the same thing here. We had a number of discussions on the website saying it's actually a benefit that the VM doesn't ship in Chrome, because that means we don't have to deployment targets to your users and JavaScript code for all the browsers that didn't support Dart. So we really think it's better to bet on the open web and then make sure our tools offer benefits above and beyond that.
Great, thank you. Question 6 is about Dart and React. I get this context for web apps as I talked about mobile apps earlier.
So there are folks working on code that works in a React-style API, so I forget the name of them. I think it's our friends at Workiva on the web with Dart. I'm guessing the person who asked the question when they say ecosystem, does that mean that Dart code can work with other reactive people using React.js and other frameworks? This would probably take some interop work. We do have an okay interop story with JS. We need to do a bunch of work there, and we're looking to do some of that next year. So in general, what we found is if you want to do small bits of interoperability with existing JavaScript, it works pretty well. But when you start talking about kind of framework level things, you end up having to create lots of facades for lots of APIs. So the short answer is if you want to use React.js with Dart, you probably have to do a bunch of interop work. It might be possible, but I'm guessing it might be also a difficult task. I would look at the React APIs that exist for Dart. And then I always like to remind people too that we are heavily invested in the Angular Dart set of packages, and the performance and code size of all those is increasing constantly, and that's really where we recommend people to go, because that's where you'll get the most support.
Thank you. Question 6 is about front ends, I guess, and specifically a question about any experience with Electron.
Electron is the kind of JavaScript web-based app framework, correct?
I suspect the answer is similar to the one in the preceding slide.
Yeah, I mean, a good example here, we have successful done a bunch of interesting things in the JS ecosystem. So just to give a list, our Firebase web API pretty well. We'd like to upgrade it pretty soon, but it works well. Natalie and our team, who manages the Sass project, open source, is now deploying the JavaScript version of Sass compiled from Dart. So that's a library that's expected to work across any node environment. That's completely written in Dart. We have someone in our community that's successful cloud functions, which are only support JavaScript, but we compile those with Dart. So across many places, we've had people with success writing Dart code that targets a JS platform, whether that's Firebase, Cloud Functions, Sass and Node. So I'm guessing it would be possible here as well. You just have to get the interop work. And again, like I said, our interop story is okay right now. We have plans to make it much better in 2018. We're kind of front-loading and working on the Dart 2.0 stuff first.
Thank you. Question for you, Anders. Any plans for our union types?
Yes, Anders, please tell us.
The short and boring answer is no. We don't have any current plans to do that. But the longer and the closer to reality questions, and it's something we've been talking about a lot and discussing, and obviously in particular with DOM manipulation and in general interaction with JavaScript. It in some cases can come in handy and give you better type information. As you're also right, you could just use dynamic and you can make things work, but you could get more precise information. So it's definitely something that could potentially happen. Like I said, the current well-defined plans are about landing that at the moment, but very much looking forward to defining the next wave of changes that we can land in the language. So I wouldn't rule out union types.
Okay. I guess a more here and now question. Dynamic?
Yes. So dynamic is part of Dart, and it will remain part of Dart. So Dart still has optional types in the sense that you can use dynamic, and we have a short example shown here, which you can run straight away right in Dart if you want. Essentially, what you will see is that if you run with the new strong mode for Dart, when you run this program, it will actually complain that you cannot assign foobar to something which is of type int. where I, with the use of var, with doing type inference, figuring out that that's an integer. Whereas if you use dynamic, you'll continue to be able to run this perfectly fine. And if you don't run strong mode, in fact, the first half of the program will still be okay, and in all cases you can still print. So you can still run the code for the dynamic part. It will print foobar just fine. So dynamic will stay in the language, and you can use it obviously also in the context of strong mode. And in some cases you will need to use dynamic once you move to strong mode.
Great, thank you. Question for you, Kevin. Any plans for more marketing around Angular?
Perfect. Absolutely. So the short answer is yes. I'm doing a bunch of kind of front-loading research right now to understand how to put the pieces together. The longer answer here is we've done a number of kind of iterations on our APIs and our tools. The final set of these changes are coming out right now in terms of moving to the dev compiler instead of Dartium. We're working on a new build system. And so we really did not want to do a big marketing push until we had these pieces all together, just to minimize confusion. It would be bad to spend 2017 teaching new developers about Dartium to remove it. So we have a number of plans around this in 2018. And storing, a lot of that is already coming together. You can look at the build package now, and you can look at the work we're doing in the alpha release of Angular. So stay tuned.
All right. One more for you, Kevin. Why are minified JS files so big?
Great question. So there's a couple things here. First is, if you do hello world, it of course will be bigger. The analogy I would make is, hello world in assembler versus you write hello world in C and you compile it. C version will be much bigger. So we have a lot of infrastructure that goes into just bootstrapping a Dart app. So to be clear kind of what our targets are, we do have targets that if you're looking at, there's a Hacker News kind of sample app that's going around. We're really looking at apps of that complexity. So I call this a non-trivial app. So hello world, we're going to be bigger. We have some thoughts about how to improve that, but it's not really our focus. What we really want to focus on is a real world kind of minimally interesting app where you're actually doing some real work. You might, do XHR to get data from the server. Not necessarily complex, but something that's actually functional. And for these types of apps, what we have found is that we're very competitive. So once you get beyond kind of just the core cost of kind of bootstrapping how Dart thinks about JavaScript, and you get to a real app, we've actually found our code size to be competitive with a number of other frameworks. We have plans to make this. That is Perl. I'm sorry that we're big and we'll try to be smaller. But the really interesting thing and the thing we're focusing on is something that's a real app. So if you build like a real sample app that does something interesting, and you compare it to other frameworks, Angular, JavaScript, or other things, that's a place where we really do want to have a conversation about code size. But yeah, hello world, it's not really our target.
All right, thank you. One more for you, Kevin.
Sorry, guys.
How do you control how
Guys.
different modules are loaded?
Can you come in?
Only loaded when needed.
We have time. Kevin, sorry. We have time for the last question.
Okay. Do you want to take a live question, or do you want to continue with
Actually, you
the
cannot.
questions?
This question I'll have to dig in more.
That's okay.
If we're
Let's
loading
see
it
from Ryan if you want to take any live questions before we sign off.
Actually, you can choose any question you want and answer it.
We'll click through them.
Okay, let me see.
I can answer the one about what kind of project you suggest to realize for someone not skilled at Dart, wanting to understand and learn about it. Go look at Flutter.io, try the code lab, try to build something, perhaps even use Firebase. That should give you a great experience of what it's like writing Dart code, and also even seeing how you can use it to deploy mobile apps across platforms. So that would be where I would start.
Sounds great to me. Thanks so much to Ryan for hosting us. Thanks so much for everyone attending. Sorry we couldn't make it physically in presence. We're around the world in 3 different places right now. I'm actually usually with Anders, but right now in Helsinki, so we could not make travel plans for it. But thank you so much for coming today.
And one final note, if you want to chat or ask questions, time zones might be off, but we are on Gitter, the Gitter chat system. And so come find us there. It's a good place to interact with the team directly.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, bye-bye.